My name is René. I'm general partner in Moonhill Capital. Moonhill Capital is an investment company, venture capital fund based in EU, and we try to invest into, or we are seeding the future of Web3. And recently, one of our portfolio companies that we have invested in is actually a Tenderize Me, and we are having also CEO of Tenderize here on our Twitter Spaces. And the topic that we are going to discuss will be liquid staking 2.0, which features a new approach which protects against centralizing forces of traditional liquid staking and also enables liquid staking without compromising a decentralized validator set while delivering a staking experience that is as native as possible. So Tenderize goes back to the roots of staking and creates a unique liquid staking experience with individual LSTs per validator. These validator-specific LSTs serve as permissionless white-label liquid staking infrastructure and can easily be composed into aggregators and are highly synergetic with restaking or distributed validator technology. So just to summarize it really simply, Tenderize returns us back to decentralization. And now I would like to introduce CEO of Tenderize, Alec. Hello, Alec. Can you give a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, hey, thank you for the intro. Yeah, I'll get to my intro in just a second, but yeah, our basic philosophy is that you don't have to sacrifice centralization for some healthy liquid staking yield. So quick, just a background on myself real fast. So I've been building in crypto now for a couple of years. I co-founded a decentralized savings account, which we built out for the last about 4 years called SpareX. It's live on Arbitrum. And yeah, outside of crypto, I'm a snowboarder, I'm a weightlifter, I like building DeFi protocols, and ultimately I'm just kind of a finance nerd. And I'm sure many people here are on the same page with me. I think that, as our economy goes digital, we're going to need trustless rails for this economy, and I'm definitely sold that permissionless blockchains are those rails, and that's why I spend my time working in DeFi.
Amazing. Thank you, Alec, for the great intro. Now I would like to ask Jim, could you give a little intro about you and about Figment Capital, please?
Yeah, sure. Hey, I'm Jim, aka Velvet Milkman. I'm the managing partner at Figment Capital. We're an early stage venture fund that focuses on blockchain infrastructure. We started in 2021 and we spun out of a company called Figment. Figment is one of the largest proof of stake infrastructure providers in the world and has been around since like 2017 or something like that. So they've been kind of like right at the forefront with a few of the other larger institutional infrastructure providers providing, validation services for blocks. As a result of I worked at Figment for a little while before spinning out to join Figment, and so we have like a pretty strong background in blockchain infrastructure and liquid staking 2.0 and Tenderize specifically were like a really interesting kind of new opportunity that we thought is going to become sort of like the preeminent way that like liquid staking takes off as we get like greater and greater adoption in blockchains and in the investment in tokens and proof of stake networks. So happy to be here, excited to be here. Did I forget anything?
Yeah, thank you very much for the intro. I think it was
Cool.
pretty nice. And the last one of our guests is Erwe, who is representing Angel Squad DAO. So Erwe, please, could you give a little bit intro about yourself?
I joined crypto space in 2013, basically. And as René mentioned, now I'm part of Angel Squad DAO, which is a syndicate, venture syndicate. And we had the pleasure to had Tenderize as one of the projects that we were able to introduce to our syndicate.
Thank you very much, Erwe. Okay, Alec. First question that I would have on you is like you started your journey with Tenderize really during the strong bear market, and it's quite hard to build something in bear market, especially at the beginning of bear market. So I would like to ask you a little bit more about your journey, about the start, and about the milestone that you have achieved. What was okay, just this, and then I will ask you about further questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So that's kind of a multifaceted question because I guess let me start by saying, maybe this is going to be helpful context just for the whole discussion. So back in 2021, there were a couple of the Tenderize co-founders running a node operator business. And they had this pain point, which was that they had all this self-stake that was on their node and it was generating yield, but there wasn't any ability to get any liquidity on that position to do things like hire more people to grow the business, right? So that's kind of the initial motivation behind building Tenderize. We wanted to build Tenderize in such a way that allowed all market participants to enjoy the benefits of liquid staking and not just the DeFi degen who's looking for a little bit of yield on their position. So after a couple of successful hackathons where we kind of like tested out, what this architecture could look like, we ended up building what is Tenderize V1. This is after raising our seed round in late 2021. So in 2022, in literally the bottom tick of the bear market, we launched Tenderize V1, and this was effectively like a proof of concept for what we're calling liquid staking 2.0 and the evolution of liquid staking, which we're in right now. And building in a bear market is just there's negatives and positives, right? So negatives are that there's not much buzz around the space, so attracting capital is quite challenging, especially attracting TVL. But there's always a little bit of silver lining in building with a bear market, right? Because you aren't distracted by all of this noise in the space. The people that are left building in a bear market are really committed individuals that really believe in the power of this technology. So it's launching the V1 in the bear was hard to attract TVL, but it really allowed us to focus on the product, right? And it informed what we needed to do to improve the product. We were able to talk with all of our clients. We were able to build a cohort of node operators that really believed in our vision. And if that was done in a bull market, I'm not sure if we would have been able to do that, right? So launching in the bear helped us hone in the product, really design an infrastructure that people need and people will use. And that informed us into the design decisions of how we built Tenderize V2. And we just launched V2 earlier this month, actually on the last day of January. And now we're off to the races building Tenderize V2. So bear market building is not easy, but there are definitely some silver linings when it comes to launching in a bear market.
Would you consider your biggest challenge during the bear market to obtain funds for building, or is there anything else that you would consider really harder part?
I'd say that not necessarily sure, okay, fundraising is obviously challenging, but if you have a reputable team with in your reasonable metrics and you're not asking for the whole lot, VCs are reasonable and investors are reasonable. They can see value where value lies. But the very challenging thing is getting people to actually part with their investments that they have. So if you're building a DeFi protocol, one of your primary metrics is liquidity within the system. So, total value locked within your system, because that's effectively the amount of throughput that your system can handle. And in a bear market, there's just so much uncertainty that people are holding their assets very, very tight. So some even sell off assets in the bear market. But either way, those that still have significant holdings of the assets in which you're trying to acquire as a growth individual at a protocol, it's not an easy feat to get them to part with this position. They're concerned about smart contract risk, and they see their net worth dwindling down, and they want to do everything in their power to maintain that net worth, and they don't like taking on what sometimes is considered an extra layer of risk. Whether you're in a bull or a bear market, smart contract risk exists. But what you'll see is in a bull market, people ape into protocols without even needing an audit. And then in a bear market, no audit is enough to build the trust necessary to get the TVL through the door. So very different strategies when it comes to growth and BD.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. But Erwe here is the one who is representing Angel Squad, and that's also the place that has been built basically during the bear market. So I would just like to ask you, have you seen the same obstacles or difficulties or challenges during the bear market while building Angel Squad, like now Alec has described with Tenderize Me?
Well, yeah, basically, I think bear market is for building, so that's what we've been doing the whole time during the bear market and slowly growing the community, which is, I think, the core of our syndicate. So I can see that now things are getting more traction. We got like community members joining. We just crossed actually 500 members on Discord today, and we can see like that the growth been accelerating pretty much in the last couple of months. So yeah, it's been a bit slow during the bear market, but now are things taking off.
Can I add to that real fast?
Definitely.
Yeah, so you mentioned that like sometimes the growth goes slower, but like the growth that you find in a bear market is definitely like more sticky community members. Like in bull markets, everyone's just so like the feedback loops are just so short, and everyone is so financially motivated that when you have these like even on metrics of like, you know, key metrics like unique deposit addresses or like social metrics like followers on Twitter or like Discord members joining your community. In a bull market, you can't even rely on those members sticking around. But if someone's in the bear market and they really take the time to understand what you're building and they want to spend time with you, and the team is always that much more accessible in a bear market as well, you can really rely on those core team members really having your back. And I always recommend that do what it takes to identify those champions and get them effectively on your team. So whether that means giving them a small token package or making them, you know, giving them a small fiat-based salary to be an ambassador, whatever it takes, find those champions and get them to be as aligned with you as possible, because they supported you in the bear market. You know, you can support them through the bull.
Yeah, I can agree with this. I actually really like bear markets. I don't like when we get too fast into bull market. Regarding the bear market, it's really like we can simply take 1 or even 2 weeks to make a proper due diligence. And you know, all the time, like we are receiving a lot of decks. Currently, we are screening something about 300 decks a month. And out of these decks, there are more than 80% of those that are like really low quality, and that you know in less than 2 minutes, usually in less than 1 minute, that you can separate them. But then the rest is something that you need to spend time with, right? And once you are spending time, it's very precious resource, like the time of yours for due diligence and for taking effort, energy. And the deeper you go with the due diligence, the more time and effort it takes. And market, it's good because we have that time. But during the bull market, like everything is happening all at once, and you don't have the time. And already it happened to us during the last bull market period that we had like really literally 2 hours to decide if we want to get into the deal. And I can see already signs of something not similar to this, but somehow comparable. Currently, when there are already deals, usually those A-tier deals that are oversubscribed immediately, or there are VCs that those were not active like 1 year ago or 8 months ago. They were not active at all. And currently they are those who come to the meeting with project and they are like, yeah, we are able to take 80% of your round and it's okay for us. But they were not doing something right during the bear market. They most probably didn't believe in the market and that strongly during the bear market, and now they want to do it properly. So this is it. Like when we are already getting ourselves to the projects where we spend our time and our due diligence, like it can take anywhere from like few hours to week, and in total like really too many hours spent on due diligence, because it's like this. And especially with the projects, those are having, from our point of view, a little bit more risky profile. Like, let's say projects, those are having Indian founders or founders from Russian speaking countries, let's say, because those founders, we've seen already like too many projects which were fabricating numbers or different parts of their story. And then we need to spend really a lot of time to verify everything. So I think this is the idea from me on this topic. I hope I answered your questions. If you are having any additional questions, feel free to ask.
2 hours to make a decision sounds stressful.
Yeah, man, it is really. But that's what you need to do actually, like a VC sometime. You are having other duties, but suddenly you, like the whole team, you need to be flexible enough to sit in front of computer, to take on your earplugs and have a call and discuss everything. And also sometimes there is the thing that the whole team is aligned with the idea of investing. But in such case, what we really like, and quite often I like this position of devil's advocate. Even when I agree with my partners in some things, I try to play that I don't agree, and I'm trying to search for some opposite point of view. So, when there's a room where everybody agrees on something, that room, it means that not that many people are thinking in that room. So we try to all the time do very well informed investment decisions. And in order to do that, we need to see the whole picture, from each angle, and that's sometimes quite hard, especially in such short time frame. That's why we really love bear market, when we are having enough time to discuss everything, to look at everything, and so on. Okay, I think we are able to another question of ours, right? I would like to know, Alec, what did influence your strategy, plan, or product most?
Yeah, so as we kind of introduced in the beginning here, as though most liquid staking protocols today have inherently centralizing attributes to them, particularly the validator whitelist. And what we mean by that is these liquid staking protocols today, they typically use one liquid stake derivative, and this one token is liquid on an AMM like Uniswap v3 or Curve. And this works pretty well for the DeFi native user who's just looking for some yield. But on the back end, what it does is it funnels all of the stake to a very small subset of validators. And you're seeing this problem play out right now with the Lido product, Staked ETH, because they're managing almost 33% of all the Ether on all the stake work. And as you know, like with over 33% of the staked ETH, you can start effectively doing malicious activity in the network. So what we're doing here at Tenderize is we're building a credibly neutral base layer for staking. And in order for this base layer to be actually credibly neutral and not direct stake to any one direction, we needed it to be permissionless from both the staker perspective, but also from the validator perspective. So this is really like the key innovation of what we're working with here. We don't use any validator whitelists, and we allow for the staker to have radical flexibility to stake to whichever validator they want. And then if they desire to have one of these indexes, you can totally build an index. You just comprise it of these individual liquid staking tokens, where one liquid staking token has the reward and the risk siloed just to one specific validator. So that really is like the backbone of the innovation here. What also enables this validator-specific approach to be possible is our approach to liquidity. So instead of trying to incentivize each and every one of these LSTs on Curve or on Uniswap, instead we have what we're calling TenderSwap, and it's a public liquidity pool that plays the role of like a liquidity backstop for any liquid staking token in the ecosystem. So this public liquidity pool is effectively like a LST agnostic routing system, and each and every one of these LSTs get instant liquidity. So you as a staker, you get to stake to whichever validator you'd like or create any custom index, and you can rely on an on-chain liquidity pool. You don't have to worry about simply using the LST that's most liquid on Curve or on Uniswap. So really that's what it enables us to democratize the user base. DeFi native users are happy to go to Curve and get staked ETH, but for those stakers that have custom risk profiles or maybe compliance needs to satisfy, and for example, want to stake exclusively to Mint, with Tenderize as a middleware, they can enjoy the benefits of liquid staking, but they don't have to subject themselves to all these unnecessary risks like complex smart contracts or commingling of funds. So key innovation TLDR, we have a new approach to liquidity, which actually enables validator-specific LSTs, and that allows for all market participants who are currently staking to also enjoy liquid staking, not just the DeFi DJet.
Okay, so we already have answered also another questions that I had on you, like what innovation you're bringing to the sector. But that's what I'm gonna ask in different way to Jim. Which innovations or which aspect of the project of Tendi were crucial for you to decide to go further in the investment and trust in the team, in the project, and be on board?
Cool, yeah. Sure. So there's a couple of different areas. I think number one is the projects and the proof of stake networks that Tenderize applies to. When we first met with Nico, one of the founders at Tenderize, he'd been working for, I believe, several years at LivePeer, as well as like running his own infrastructure operations on the validator side. And he identified a need for, that there's staking on delegated proof of stake and proof of stake networks, but proof of stake has many, many flavors. And one where there's these networks that, essentially all that they do is like process transactions. Ethereum's proof of stake, for example, Osmosis is delegated proof of stake, for example, Solana is delegated proof of stake. And their job is really to process transactions and produce blocks. There are other networks that are also proof of stake, but aren't blockchains. LivePeer is a good example. Other examples are like Audius, as well as like the Graph, and these networks, provide data, and there is staking to them, and it's a work token. You need the token in order to like perform some amount of work, and you pay for like that work to be performed in the native token. This was like a liquid staking. The belief was here that like liquid staking is a way of being able to pay for that work, but at the same time not like lose out. So you can hold the token, right, and you can pay for goods like with the token, for work with the token, but the just sitting, idly in your wallet, not accruing, additional rewards, and essentially like it's not like diluting, the ownership in the network. There's a world. The great thing about liquid staking is that like if it's like adopted as money, it can be used. Like it's something that you can pay for services and work with, while at the same time it accrues value. And so it's sort of like a savings account in many ways, like kind of like a checking and a savings account combined in some ways. So number one was like this was just like an untapped market that hadn't seen a liquid stake token or model applied to it. So number one was like, we come from Figment, we come from an operator's background, and we saw this and said, wow, this is really interesting, and we think that this is like going to be really useful and very, very valuable. So number one, it was just like sort of like, expanding the LST market into new areas. So that was number one. Obviously Nico's background, having spent so much time at LivePeer and understanding work tokens, became really a big point to us and a valuable like data point to us when we considered and ultimately invested in Tenderize. Secondly was like this idea that like over a long enough time horizon that, and we're actually seeing like some folks bring this up again, which is like where Tenderize V1 ultimately like kind of settled on the design, and then like V2 also has this design, but has also like incorporated sort of like a let's call it like an aggregation of these liquid staking tokens. Is that essentially one area that's really interesting with the design is that Tenderize, there's a liquid staking token in delegated proof of stake, but depending on like, but each token can if I delegate my token and I delegate it to a validator A, I get A token, like essentially assigned to the specific validator. Maybe that validator runs an MEV client. Maybe that validator also charges 10% commissions. Whereas like operator B maybe doesn't run an MEV client, but only charges 5% commissions. When it comes to work tokens specifically, like the graph or like LivePeer, there's not every operator is actually doing the same type of work. Some operators might actually be better suited to do harder tasks, to perform harder tasks. And they're actually paid more than operators that do simpler tasks. But because like obviously like the quality of the work and like the complexity of the work, you get rewarded differently as a result of that. So the need for sort of this different type of design was like kind of instrumental in like one of the areas that like, Tenderize really focused on. You can actually expand that beyond like, just like Lido, for example, for Ethereum liquid staking. What do? Well, they have these contracts with operators, not just any operator that validates on Ethereum, can run nodes today on Lido. You have to kind of be whitelisted and you have to be approved. And then once you're approved, you have to charge a specific type of amount of commission, charge more, you can't charge less. You have to run, certain sort of like, there are certain requirements to operating on Lido. For Tenderize, essentially every validator it doesn't have to be kind of like a one size fits all. You can have very specific and make sure that you're delegating and staking and liquid staking, your liquid staking token applies specifically to like the performance of the operator. You can delegate maybe based on like, there's too much stake at Figment's validator. I want to stake with someone smaller. And they're actually going to charge me a lower commission rate. Tenderize doesn't sort of centralize the decision-making points around who can operate and like what are the terms in which like a delegator can, what they can expect in terms of rewards. You get to kind of choose your own adventure, and with that comes like the potential to be slashed. It also maybe includes like lower commission fees, or it could actually also include like higher yield returns. We think that this is like really important, and we think it's really interesting. Down the road, what we might see as well is like, right now, liquid staking is still in its like nascent stages. It's still pretty early for liquid staking, outside of like, you know, essentially Ethereum and maybe Solana. But what we could envision in a world is that, like, you know, and we've heard some conversations and some concerns about, like, you know, centralizing forces of like liquid staking providers. That, you know, if what happens when, you know, Lido owns greater than 33% of all stake on Ethereum. And part of the reason why that's a concern is because of like this kind of centralizing force that like they kind of require their validators to like fit in within this box, right? That there's only so many validators today that exist and that you can like stake to, that are earning a commission on the rewards, on their portion of the rewards. It's not open to all. A model like this essentially further promotes decentralization to some degree. And it essentially is something that we think is like really important, and that like, especially when it comes to delegated proof of stake networks, is going to like absolutely be like adopted. That time horizon and and what scale does crypto have to be on in order for this to become a really, really, really important issue? We can debate, but I think that we're going to see more and more networks start to think about this type of model. And we're already seeing that. There was something on the Celestia forum recently about like LST monopolies. And LST monopolies essentially are these LST protocols that, you know, they choose which validators that get this provides sort of a fair playing field where we're going to compete on performance, we're going to compete on liveness, and we're going to compete on like low cost. And that makes it just a better overall marketplace to delegate to.
Amazing, Jim. Thank you very much for this nice insight. I cannot do anything else than to agree with basically everything. But I would like to ask Erwe, who is communicating a lot with communities, especially from the countries around Czechia, Slovakia, and Europe. And he's talking a lot to people like OGs in the space, but also with some newbies, with people who came into the space in 2021, and like huge community. And I would like to know if you think that these people understand what Jim was talking about, or is there a need from your side to somehow educate these people? How do you evaluate this?
Yeah, so basically I would say that most of our community comes back like to previous bull run already, or even 2 bull runs back. So there is a lot of people in the Angel Squad community that know what's going on, but as well as we are onboarding new people, new members, and they might not be as experienced as the rest, we are always trying like to educate people on what every project that we bring to Angel Squad is about, what are like the positives, what are the risks coming or associated with the projects. And as well, we are trying like to educate people about the projects by doing such spaces. So I can see many familiar faces in this space. So I think that that's really positive that people are interested, even some OGs that are with us in here, to get to know more about the project.
Yeah, I can agree. It's very nice to see familiar faces here, and I'm really glad that people try to educate themselves and not just hunt for some gains, and you know, to have this proper education that is needed in order to make it in the space. So Alec, now I would like to move again to your side. You already have mentioned the innovation that you are bringing to the sector, how it shifts industry, and what has influenced your strategy. But what is your broad vision about the industry, and about how it's going to move, and what steps you especially are making, and what are some possibilities for the future outcome? Maybe this is a little bit philosophical questions, but I would like to know this, and I'm sure that also all listeners.
Yeah, so let me try to answer all those various components of that question. I mean, I think first off, the staking landscape as a whole, and especially liquid staking, is going to continue to grow. So we just passed a pretty significant milestone of 25% of all ETH being staked. So that's a huge win, not only for the price of ETH, as you know, there's going to be less supply on exchanges and demand's entering. Seems to be pretty clear that demand is picking up to buy ETH. There's going to be less ETH available on exchanges. And, you know, the more ETH that we have staked means that our networks are becoming more economically secure. So as you're considering a proof of stake network, your network is really only as secure as the dollar value of stake that is sitting in the various validators supporting that network. So I think that it's going to be a massive win as this staking continues to grow. And as staking matures, you know, there's many new liquid staking protocols entering the market. But what I think today people are kind of stuck on is, you know, as you see all these different liquid staking protocols hit the market, each of them is trying to tackle a small kind of niche aspect of the market. So for example, you have staked ETH by Lido, which is the really vanilla product designed for the DeFi degen. It's very liquid on Curve. Great product if you're just looking for some yield, right? And then there's a new protocol that launches alongside of it with a different philosophy. So maybe it's like the Liquid Collective OS ETH product, where they have a different philosophy around which validators are allowed to support that liquid staking token, okay? And there are many different protocols, each with different philosophies around who's allowed to play the role of a validator and who's allowed to stake to that. And then once you stake to it, what can you do with it? So this is all great, but instead at Tenderize, what we did was we took one step back and we said, how do we make this a credibly neutral base layer sitting beneath all of these different indexes and different protocols? And how do we wrap the whole ecosystem into one grand protocol that is almost like an enshrined liquid staking experience? So instead of going out from the get-go and saying, okay, we're going to pick these 15 validators and they're going to custody all of it, and we're going to build a certain type of financial strategy around our index. I think that that is kind of like liquid staking 1.0 in a way. And then now we have Tenderize, which again is this nearly enshrined liquid staking middleware, which allows for you to experiment with new philosophies around which validators should support an index per se, or how you want to build custom risk preferences. So say I only want to stake to Figment, as mentioned. Now I can mint a Figment-specific liquid staking token, and me as an individual who may have a contractual obligation to stay staked to a Figment or a Luga nodes, I can use Tenderize to just have my risk exposure, but say I want to experiment with building a custom index. I don't do go and, you know, dabble with this new product that's fresh on the market, but rather you can experiment with all of these different theories on top of this credibly neutral base layer. And you don't need to continuously launch new protocols, launch new tokens with these different philosophies. But rather, all of this experimentation can and should happen on a credibly neutral liquid staking layer. So TLDR, I believe that there's going to be significantly more demand for risk-adjusted exposure to liquid staking. And in order for that to happen, the answer is not to launch 100 different liquid staking protocols where 95 will fail, but rather this experimentation should be happening on top of a credibly neutral base layer, and one that focuses on not infringing on the decentralization and the credible neutrality of the underlying validator set. Just because you want high yield doesn't sacrifice decentralization in the process. And really the same thing goes for liquid restaking, right? So as we look at where there are, solutions built on top of things like eigenlayer, where there could be many different AVSs doing extremely different, or node operators are securing these different AVSs, and each of these AVSs might have different philosophies around what type of activity they allow on the chain. Some of these AVSs will be complying things like OFAC, and this philosophy of having a risk-adjusted exposure to liquid staking also is applying to the liquid restaking landscape. So more sophisticated participants are entering the space, and they do demand more risk-adjusted exposure to liquid staking and liquid restaking, and that should be happening on one credibly neutral base layer protocol instead of launching tons of different protocols just to satisfy a very niche user base. So that was a little long-winded, and I'm happy to clarify any portions of that, but yeah, that's how I'm seeing the evolution of the space.
Amazing. Thank you very much for this answer. I would just like to ask Jim if you can relate to this completely. And if so, is there anything you would like to see in this space and we are lacking it right now?
I think that Alec did a good job. Like, I don't want to take away from his answer. It was really great. I think I think the contractual, there's things that retail know about, and then there's things that retail probably just doesn't think about as much because it's not really part of the process and of their decision making, right? I think myself, even personally, I stake to. Generally, I my decision process is very different than maybe an institutional fund. And so an example of that would be, what do I think about when I stake to a validator on a delegated proof of stake network that I hold tokens on? Well, first thing I do, probably like most of you, is I look at the fee. So I don't want to pay an arm and a leg. I don't want to pay 25% fees or 15% or 20% fees. Prefer somewhere around 5 to 10%. Sometimes you see fees that are 0%, right? And that feels for some people that are uninformed, hey, look, I get to keep all of my rewards. This is great. On the flip side, and where my kind of, I've been around for a little while, I actually, something else I look at and I actually value is how involved are they in governance, right? Does the validator participate in governance? Does the validator not participate in governance? Do they contribute to the community, right? Do they post in forums? Do they think about the network and the health of the network, and how do they do they tweet? Do they not tweet? Do they give me updates on kind of what their positions are and why they're voting certain ways, especially in contentious governance proposals? And so for me, I think I'm okay, and I'm okay being charged for these services, right? I don't view it as it's something that I should just be paying nothing for and be getting for free. And partially that's there's two parts here. The first is number one is this is people are doing work, right? And they should probably get paid for that work. I like getting paid for the work I do. So I value that work, and I'm okay assigning some amount of value to that work as far as fees, but to an extent. The second thing is if it's 0% commissions, I think a lot of people go, oh, cool, this is free. Nothing is free in life, right? It's show me the incentive and I'll show you, I'll show you the decision making. And I think the question that a lot of people don't ask themselves is when they're using Robinhood to trade for free is wait a minute, why am I charging? Why am I not charging? What is it to this person for not charging me something? Maybe they're doing it altruistically, but a lot of these are a lot of people think of this from the financial return and risk perspective. And so the question is well, wait a minute, what are they getting out of it? And why are they okay charging nothing? So I think, being able to, I think number one is think being able to support those operators that maybe otherwise wouldn't be included in the liquid staking protocol set, is something that I think is really valuable and really important. And then also, the second thing that people really don't have any insight, probably don't have too much insight into, and it's something I didn't have any insight into until I came into the industry and worked at it in full time, was that there are these contractual obligations and contractual agreements between large token holders and operators sometimes. Not always, but sometimes. And that kind of maybe requires them to stake to a certain operator in order, maybe there's insurance involved. That's a contractual agreement and arrangement between these two actual entities. And so that's not on chain, right? And so giving people the opportunity to be able to stake their tokens where they want to and directly with whom they want to, especially if there's we'll use Figment as an example, a Figment LST. Well, the good news here is that I can get all the benefits of contracting with that entity. I don't have to go out and go, okay, well, Lido, how many validators are in Lido? There's 21. Okay. Well, if I'm going to liquid stake to Lido, I need assurances and I need contracts with 21 different operators, right? That's starter. That's a lot of paperwork. That's a pain in the butt. I'll just stake regularly. And I guess I'll just kind of stick with what I got, the best I can do. So I think there's ways in which and I have unbonding periods and I might have liquidity issues or something like that. And there's a lot of challenges with it. So I think generally this is a really great thing to think about, and just to kind of be informed about, because it really does kind of, once you start to kind of just think about it a little bit, this is the design that really makes the most sense, and allows for the most flexibility. And I think what Alex said, which I want to just reiterate, is this makes the liquid staking protocol neutral. They're not making decisions about who's in, which operators are in and which operators are out. This is a truly neutral platform where everyone the same ability to participate and to earn delegations, and users have the ability to hold a liquid staking token.
Amazing. Okay, I'm having here 3 questions from our community. So I would like to address them to Alec. So the first one from Yunus is, what are some potential risk of drawbacks associated with liquid staking 2.0, and how can users mitigate them effectively?
Yeah, let me address, I guess, the elephant in the room, which a lot of people bring up, which is okay, so we're doing, potentially hundreds, if not thousands, of these validator-specific liquid staking tokens, right? So if there are all of these different node operators supporting Ethereum, and we have all of these different LSTs, how the hell are we ever going to make these things liquid on Curve or on Uniswap? And my response to that is that's kind of a DeFi 1.0 mentality or mental model. We don't have to simply incentivize everything on Uniswap or on Curve. There are more innovations that are happening at the liquidity level. So that's where one of our key products called TenderSwap comes into play. So TenderSwap is this effectively an on-chain clearinghouse that's ready to facilitate the liquidity needs of any of these LSTs. So what this really is cool, because you can do extremely cheap experimentation of new liquid staking tokens. So say, we were talking about some of those indexes in the past, right? You want to create an index of only US-based OFAC compliant node operators. Up until now, what you would have to do as a protocol is you would have to build out relationships with those operators. You'd have to pitch them to, have some sort of contract in the real world to support your protocol with, like Jim mentioned, you have to set your commission fees at a certain rate. You have to have a guaranteed uptime of X. And it's a really big lift. And then once you finally get through that, then you got to worry about liquidity. You're like, how the hell am I going to make this thing liquid when Staked ETH has already got $1 billion of TVL on Curve? How am I ever going to compete against that? And to solve for that problem is where TenderSwap comes into play. So this shared liquidity backstop is publicly accessible for anyone to utilize that's playing the liquid staking game. So whether you're an institution that's staked just to Figment, that Figment token doesn't need to be liquid on Curve. There's a public liquidity pool that's readily available for you as the holder of that LST to quickly swap out the liquid staking token for the liquid underlying, and there's no need for Figment to have to go make that market on Curve. So that same philosophy goes for new experimentation around the indexes. So like I said, you want to do a US-based OFAC compliant index. Pick your 10 validators that are OFAC compliant and US based. And instead of having to go fight against Curve on the liquidity wars instead of having to fight against Lido on the liquidity wars on Curve, you can just utilize this public shared liquidity pool and get instant liquidity. So it's really going to be a foundational money Lego, which can kind of solve the fragmentation problem which is present in liquid staking. And once you solve the liquidity problem, that way, then you'll kind of solve this phenomenon of liquidity begetting liquidity, which you see in staked ETH. So staked ETH is the most liquid. New entrants feel comfortable using it because it has the most exit liquidity. But the same phenomenon of liquidity begetting liquidity also applies to our public shared liquidity pool. So as economic activity increases on chain, the liquidity of our public backstop increases as well, allowing for more experimentation at a significantly lesser cost to the builders, and simultaneously opens up the market for all staking participants to play the game, to experiment, and then ultimately the market will tell who's going to win, not just the protocol that's the best at business development and the best at creating incentivized Curve market for their index.
Okay, let's go to the other question. Alec, again, all this will be on you. Will it be possible to use or integrate thematic, TSOL, and so on in other DeFi protocols like lending, borrowing, leverage staking, and so on? Or do you plan to do it in-house?
Yeah, great question. So we've already began the conversations with multiple borrowing and lending platforms to list individual liquid staking tokens as collateral. We actually have the benefit of using the oracle of the underlying asset to determine the price. Each of our LSTs are rebasing, so they remain pegged 1-to-1 to the underlying. So it's got a really cool feature where you can just use the oracle of the underlying. So we've already began conversations with Arbitrum-based borrowing and lending protocols for that avenue. But then we'll also be working on some in-house products. So we're building the LST-backed stablecoin. And this is going to enable anyone holding a Tenderize LST or other LSTs coming later this summer to mint a US dollar denominated stablecoin against the position. So at this point, you can do whatever you would like to do with the loan. You can borrow more assets to lever up. You can sell the asset and go short to get a delta neutral position. So long story short, we're tackling both avenues, going partnership route as well as building our own LST-backed stablecoin where you can have flexibility around how you'd like to have the yields distributed. You can build custom vaults on top, and you can go in as you would like or as risk off as you would like.
I really like this answer, and like you have mentioned, Zafar, it was really a great question of yours. And then there's the last question. How does liquid staking affect the security and decentralization of a blockchain network? It's the third one that we have chosen, and it's the easier one, I guess.
Yeah, sure. Well, as we kind of talked about before, staking is critical because it is the economic security of your network. Many argue that liquid staking sometimes infringes on the security because what originally was like a locked position becomes liquid. But I'd argue that liquid staking is also a vehicle to radically increase the amount of stake that is actually participating, or the amount of assets that are actually participating in securing the network. So though, yeah, sure, you can, post your stake as collateral, which some argue is a little bit like a kind of rehypothecation. But it's not like the counterparty is lending out the asset, which is like the actual definition of rehypothecation. You still retain ownership of your keys throughout the whole experience. So it's not like you're actually lending this derivative to anyone. The validators don't control your stake. You still control your stake. So I'd argue that liquid staking is not as big of a threat on the economic security as some might argue. And when it comes to decentralization, with our credibly neutral base layer, what it allows for is the end user to whichever validator they would like, and effectively the chips will lie where they fall. You don't force stake to any sort of whitelist. So the key centralizing aspects which exist in liquid staking today are definitely mitigated when using Tenderize's base layer solution.
Okay, nice. I think we have finished like really important questions, tough ones, and now there's a time for something a little bit more funny. Like, guys, put your money where your mouth is. Share some alpha of yours. Alec, you were talking from the other side now. I will let you breathe out. I will ask Erwe from Angel Squad. Like, Erwe, share some alpha with our listeners. Shill your bags.
Definitely, I guess that everyone that is not yet a member of Angel Squad should go and join us, because there is alpha shared on a regular basis. To me, basically, what I made the most money on in the past cycles were early stage deals. Basically, there is high risk connected to that, but as well high returns. And as Angel Squad is mostly focused on bringing to the syndicate, to the members, all these early stage deals, I would suggest to everyone just come and join us, because we have alpha coming in on pretty regular basis. So that's my 2 cents.
So Alec, is there any other project except of Tenderize that you would put your money in?
Right now, I mean, I'm just using some stablecoin yield farming. I'm not a fan of smart contract risk, even though Stake ETH has all this TVL. You're still subjecting yourself to a healthy amount of smart contract risk, and there's still updates going on to that protocol. So like, I really try to avoid liquid staking, which was like a huge motivator behind building out Tenderize. I wanted a liquid staking infrastructure I could trust. So yeah, mainly I'm using things like SpareX and have some stable coins in like Radiant Capital, but no, I'm pretty much just hanging tight right now, hanging onto my spot bags and letting the ETF inflows rise the tide and rise all the ships with it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. If I was asked, I would be shilling all of our portfolio companies. So you just can check the website of ours, moonhill.capital, and you will find something with I would chill. But now the last part of the questions, pretty simple one. Alec and Erwe, I would just like you to answer really fast after each other when I ask the question, because this is not the question where you should be thinking about just something from the top of your head. And the first question is, what do you think will be the Bitcoin price at the end of the year, of this year, meaning in December? Like, could you share your opinion?
150,000 US.
Okay, cool. That was pretty fast. Okay, we do the second question. Bitcoin or Ethereum, Alec? What's your poison? ETH, okay.
ETH all day.
Okay, what are top 3 outs for this cycle of yours?
Ooh, GMX,
Nice.
Solana, and then real degen, dog with hat.
Okay, cool. We're going for the fourth question. what's the coolest NFTs that you maybe have or you like?
Milady all day.
Got it. Got it. Okay, and Trezor or Ledger?
I like Ledger.
Who are your 3 favorite crypto people?
I got to get out to the Tenderize team. My 3 favorite are Nico, Salim, and Diogo.
Amazing. That was really sweet. Okay. I think we already have spent a little bit over an hour on these Twitter Spaces. So, Alec, if you are having some final thoughts or would like to share to our listeners, or then later on also viewers, as we will make also a YouTube video out of this, please, now is the time to share it.
Yeah, just a quick closing statement. Us as users, it's our responsibility to inform ourselves as to what the underlying risks are when using liquid staking protocols. And you have the choice now to use a credibly neutral liquid staking infrastructure. So make the conscious effort to better understand what is happening with these protocols. And we hope that you choose to use Tenderize, one that cares deeply about permissionlessness and censorship resistance. Because with Tenderize, we can actually defend those core attributes together. And just a quick piece of alpha for Tenderize, go ahead to app.tenderize.me. You can stake and earn hats. Hats will represent your share of the upcoming airdrop coming in May. So if you want to get some of our governance token Wagyu, be sure to stake early and then prepare yourself for the airdrop coming in May.
That was really nice. I really appreciate this, what you just said to our listeners. And thank you very much once again to everyone who joined our Twitter Spaces. First of all, to our guests. Second of all, definitely to our special guests who were able to spread the information about Tenderize Me and about us further. And also, like I mentioned, to all listeners. And feel free to follow our page, Moonhill Capital. We will start with delivering such spaces on a regular basis with few of our portfolio companies and with some VCs and with interesting people on board. So thank you very much once again and have a great rest of the day.